The Byzantine Empire was one of the most intriguing and enduring civilizations in history, lasting for over 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. It is often described as the direct heir of ancient Greece, mainly for having preserved and passed on much of Hellenistic culture. But does this description do justice to the complexity of this civilization? Was the Byzantine Empire merely a guardian of Greek traditions, or did it create something new, reinterpreting and shaping these influences to meet its own cultural and political needs? From its beginning, the Byzantine Empire faced a series of unique challenges. Positioned at the intersection of various cultures, it was influenced by the East, Islam, Western Christianity, and of course, its Greco-Roman roots. These cross-cultural influences made the Byzantine Empire a cultural melting pot where ideas were constantly reinterpreted, contested, and adapted. This complexity makes it difficult to offer a straightforward answer to the question of its Greek heritage. One of the most fascinating aspects of Byzantine culture was how it dealt with Greek philosophy. Inheriting philosophical traditions that included giants like Plato and Aristotle, the Byzantine intellectual elite didn't settle for simply preserving these teachings. Instead, there was a conscious effort to reinterpret and integrate them into Christian theology. Plato's works, with their emphasis on the ideal world and transcendence, were particularly useful for Byzantine theologians who sought to explain concepts such as the nature of God and the immortality of the soul. Aristotle, on the other hand, with his more practical and scientific approach, was also reappropriated. Aristotelian logic was incorporated into theological debates, especially discussions on the nature of the Trinity and the relationship between the human and the divine. The use of these philosophies within Christian theology showed how the Byzantine Empire did not see its Greek heritage as a static set of ideas to be followed exactly, but as a living legacy to be adapted to new realities. This process of philosophical adaptation was not without tension. Over the centuries, there was a struggle between those who considered themselves defenders of the purity of Greek thought and those who viewed Christian theology as superior and therefore more worthy of promotion. Many Byzantine intellectuals saw themselves as direct heirs of Plato and Aristotle, but this heritage frequently clashed with the growing influence of Christian theology, which at certain times viewed Greek thought with suspicion due to its pagan nature. Another crucial point in defining Byzantine identity was the role of the Greek language. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Latin continued to be the language of the Catholic Church and the elites in the West. In the East, however, Greek took on a central role as the administrative and cultural language. This change, which occurred around the 7th century, marked a significant turning point in the empire's history, further distinguishing it from its Western counterpart. The adoption of Greek was not only a practical choice, but also a symbolic one. It represented a reaffirmation of Hellenistic heritage while helping to create a clear distinction between the Byzantine Empire and Latin West. However, the centrality of the Greek language also generated challenges. While it united Byzantine elites, it created a barrier with other emerging cultures, such as the Islamic world and the Latin kingdoms. This linguistic division helped shape the empire's political and diplomatic relationships throughout its history. In addition to philosophy and language, Byzantine art also offers a fascinating glimpse into how the empire dealt with its Greek heritage. Classical Greek art, with its focus on realism and physical perfection, was gradually abandoned by Byzantine artists. Instead, the empire's art became more abstract, symbolic, and spiritualized. The human figures depicted in Byzantine icons and mosaics, for example, did not aim to capture physical beauty, but to express a higher spiritual reality. This aesthetic shift was driven by Christian theology, which saw art as a means to transcend the material and represent the divine. Images of saints and sacred figures were not merely decorative. They played a crucial role in the religious life of the empire. Icons, in particular, were venerated as windows to the divine, connecting the faithful to the spiritual world. This new form of art reflected the transformation of Greek heritage to meet the religious and spiritual needs of the empire. However, this artistic transformation also sparked controversy within the empire. The period of iconoclasm, between the 8th and 9th centuries, was marked by an intense debate over the use and veneration of icons. Many critics argued that the use of sacred images was a form of idolatry, while others defended it as essential to religious practice. This dispute reflects the cultural and theological tensions that ran through the empire's history, showing how art was also a battleground for ideological struggles. Alongside Greek influences, the Byzantine Empire was also profoundly shaped by other cultures. Its relationships with the East, especially with the Islamic world, played a crucial role in its history. For centuries, the empire was in direct contact with the Islamic Caliphate and other Eastern powers, such as the Sassanid Empire. These encounters influenced everything from imperial administration to architecture. The famous Hagia Sophia, for example, is a symbol of this cultural fusion. While its structure is a marvel of Roman engineering, its design also reflects Eastern influences. The monumental dome of Hagia Sophia, with its immense scale and elegance, exemplifies how the Byzantine Empire adapted and reconfigured architectural elements from different traditions to create something unique. These external influences not only enriched Byzantine culture, but also helped shape its identity. By appropriating Eastern and Islamic elements, the empire managed to adapt and evolve, remaining relevant in a constantly changing geopolitical landscape. This dynamism is one of the reasons why the Byzantine Empire survived for so long, even while facing constant threats from invaders and internal crises. In this way, the Byzantine Empire was both an heir and an innovator. It preserved many aspects of Greek culture, but also reconfigured this heritage to meet its own needs and challenges. This adaptability was crucial to its survival and success. While it kept alive many traditions of the Hellenistic world, the empire also created a new identity that distinguished it from its predecessors. However, it's essential to remember that this cultural transformation was not uniform. There was always a tension between the desire to preserve the past and the need to innovate. Its history, the Byzantine Empire struggled to balance these forces, and this struggle throughout helped shape its identity over the centuries. Thus, we can conclude that the Byzantine Empire was not merely a simple heir of ancient Greece. It was a creator of a new identity, a unique civilization that drew on its Greek roots, but also adapted to the realities and influences of its time. Over its existence, the empire reinterpreted its heritage in ways that reflected its own needs and challenges, creating a culture that was both deeply traditional and innovative. This duality, being both an heir and an innovator, is what makes the Byzantine legacy so fascinating. The Byzantine Empire was not simply a bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds. It was a civilization that left a lasting mark on history, transforming what it inherited into something new and unique. As the centuries passed, the Byzantine Empire continued to develop as a distinct civilization, while grappling with the duality of its influences and heritage. This complexity shaped all aspects of Byzantine life: politics, culture, religion, and even international relations. The empire, which initially inherited the structures of the Greco-Roman world, constantly needed to adapt to survive in a changing world, always in the shadow of emerging powers and external cultural influences. One of the most significant aspects of this transformation was how the empire dealt with Christianity. Christianity was a central element of Byzantine identity from the outside. After Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of the empire in the 4th century, the Orthodox Church became one of the most powerful and influential institutions in the Byzantine Empire. However, the Orthodox Christianity adopted by the Byzantines was also deeply shaped by ancient Greek philosophical and cultural traditions. For example, the Byzantine doctrine incorporated aspects of Neoplatonism, a branch of Platonic philosophy that emphasized the transcendence of the material world and the quest for union with the divine. This fusion of religious and philosophical ideas resulted in an Orthodox Christianity that differed significantly from Western Christianity, both in terms of theology and liturgical practices. The pursuit of spiritual purity and connection with the divine was deeply rooted in Greek philosophical thought, which continued to influence how the Byzantines interpreted their faith. Another point of contrast and at the same time connection with the ancient world was the concept of imperial authority. In the Byzantine Empire, the emperor was seen not only as a political leader, but also as a defender of the faith and a representative of God on earth. This idea of a divinely chosen ruler had roots both in Roman tradition and Christian beliefs. However, over the centuries, this notion developed differently from imperial authority in the West. While Western rulers often had to negotiate their power with the papacy and the nobility, in the Byzantine Empire, the emperor had more direct control over the Orthodox Church. This phenomenon is known as Caesaropapism, in which the rulers simultaneously exercised temporal and spiritual power. Unlike medieval European rulers, who often faced conflicts with the papacy, Byzantine emperors used religion as a tool to reinforce their authority and legitimacy, exemplifying the symbiosis between Roman political heritage and Christian values that shaped the empire's identity. However, this fusion of spiritual and political power also generated internal tensions. The Byzantine Empire was frequently plagued by theological and religious disputes that reflected both the cultural diversity of its territory and the various ways in which the Byzantines interpreted their faith. A famous example is the controversy over the use of religious icons. This dispute, known as the iconoclastic controversy, involved intense debates about the nature of worship and the role of images in religious life. For nearly a century, between the 8th and 9th centuries, the empire was divided between iconoclasts, who believed that the veneration of sacred images was a form of idolatry, and iconophiles, who defended the use of icons as an essential part of religious practice. This conflict was not merely a theological dispute, but also a political struggle, as it reflected how different factions within the empire viewed the relationship between Greek tradition and the new Christian faith. The eventual outcome, with the restoration of icons, shows how Greek artistic tradition was reinterpreted to meet the spiritual needs of the Christian era. However, this cultural heritage was not confined to just religion or philosophy. Byzantine diplomacy also stood out for its sophistication and adaptability. The Byzantine Empire, surrounded by enemies and emerging powers, always had to use diplomacy as a strategic tool to ensure its survival. Often, the empire avoided direct confrontations with its enemies through alliances, dynastic marriages, and trade agreements. This approach, known as Byzantine diplomacy, helped prolong the empire's existence, allowing it to survive far longer than other states of its time. Byzantine diplomacy was also characterized by its ability to absorb cultural influences from its neighbors. The empire maintained relations with a wide range of cultures, including Arabs, Persians, Slavs, and even nomadic peoples of the steppe. This cultural exchange resulted in a syncretism that shaped many aspects of Byzantine society, from fashion and cuisine to architecture and art. The Byzantines, for example, absorbed influences from Persian and Islamic architecture, creating a unique architectural style, exemplified by the majestic Hagia Sophia, which remains one of the empire's greatest achievements. Furthermore, the Byzantine Empire's cultural impact extended far beyond its borders. Its influence on the Slavic peoples, for example, was long-lasting and profound. The adoption of Orthodox Christianity by the Slavs, especially the Russians, ensured that Byzantine culture continued to live on even after the fall of Constantinople in 1453. The Slavic liturgical language, Cyrillic, was created by Byzantine missionaries, Saints Cyril and Methodius, and is still used in various Orthodox churches today. Thus, Byzantine culture, although it disappeared as a political force, continued to influence the Slavic world and Orthodox Christianity for centuries. Whether in diplomacy, art, or religion, the Byzantine Empire demonstrated a remarkable ability to absorb and reinterpret external influences without losing its own identity. This adaptability is one of the most fascinating aspects of its history, and one of the reasons the empire managed to survive so long in such a volatile political environment. However, the question remains, to what extent was this Greek identity? Despite the strong presence of Greek culture in the Byzantine Empire, it is important to remember that Byzantine civilization was not a faithful copy of ancient Greece. Instead, it was a melting pot of cultures and influences that together formed something entirely new. The use of the Greek language and veneration of Greek philosophers were certainly important aspects, but Orthodox Christianity, Eastern influences, and centralized imperial power gave the Byzantine Empire its own identity, which transcended its Greek roots. When we look at the history of the Byzantine Empire as a whole, we see that it was not merely a passive heir to ancient Greece. Instead, it was a civilization that both preserved and transformed this heritage. The Byzantines did not see themselves as mere guardians of the Greek legacy, but as creators of a new civilization that blended the best of the ancient world with new ideas and influences. This mixture of heritage and innovation is what makes the Byzantine Empire so unique and so difficult to categorize. Although described as a continuation of the Roman Empire, it was neither purely Roman nor purely Greek. It was something entirely new, a synthesis of influences that created an extraordinary civilization whose legacy can still be seen today in Orthodox churches, architecture, art, and even on the cultural borders of Europe and Asia. As we delve into the history of the Byzantine Empire, it becomes increasingly evident how this cultural melting pot was fundamental in shaping its identity. The empire was both a guardian of ancient traditions and an innovator in various aspects, from governance practices to spirituality and daily life. The idea of continuity, of being an heir to ancient Greece, was a narrative that helped legitimize Byzantine power, but this same heritage was often reinterpreted and adapted to fit new realities. A clear example of this fusion of tradition and innovation was the empire's own administrative structure. While the Roman Empire had laid the foundations for centralized governance, the Byzantine Empire needed to adapt this model to survive constant external and internal threats. Byzantine bureaucracy was incredibly sophisticated for its time and one of the most complex in the medieval world. Unlike their Roman predecessors, who created an imperial structure based on direct territorial control, the Byzantines developed a more flexible form of governance that allowed the empire to maintain influence over distant territories, often through alliances and indirect arrangements. This bureaucracy was not merely a Roman inheritance, but a mixture of practices that included Eastern influences, particularly Persian and Christianity, as a unifying force. The fusion of different political and religious traditions allowed the empire to adapt to changes and create a form of government capable of surviving crises that destroyed other empires. Here, we see once again how the Byzantine Empire was not simply an heir, but an innovator, adapting the lessons of the past to the needs of a new world. The notion of adaptation, in fact, is central to understanding how the empire viewed its identity. Although Greek became the official language of the empire, replacing Latin, this linguistic choice was much more than a simple matter of communication. By adopting Greek, the empire reaffirmed its connections to Hellenistic heritage, but also sent a message to the world that it was the legitimate continuation of the Greek cultural tradition. The Greek language, with its rich literary and philosophical tradition, gave the empire a solid foundation to project itself as an erudite and sophisticated civilization, distinct from both the Latin West and the Islamic East. However, the emphasis on Greek also created divisions within the empire. While it was the language of the elites and the administration, many of the empire's more distant regions spoke other languages, such as Armenian, Coptic, Arabic, and Slavic. The empire's linguistic and cultural diversity was both a source of strength and tension. The Byzantines' ability to govern such a vast and culturally diverse territory depended on their ability to strike a balance between centralization and flexibility. This tension between unity and diversity was a persistent feature throughout the empire's entire existence. Another important dimension of this multifaceted identity was the role of religion. Orthodox Christianity, which developed in parallel with the empire's history, was both a source of cohesion and division. On one hand, Christian faith helped unite different populations under the banner of a common belief. On the other hand, theological disputes often threatened internal stability. The iconoclast period is one such example. The controversy over the use of religious icons was not just a matter of personal devotion, but a reflection of deep divisions within the empire over how Greek heritage should be reconciled with the new Christian faith. the iconoclastic crisis was, in many ways, a struggle between two worldviews. On one side were those who advocated for a more spiritualized and abstract form of Christianity, rejecting the use of images for fear that they encouraged idolatry. On the other were those who saw icons as a continuation of the rich artistic tradition of ancient Greece, reinterpreted to serve the purpose of Christian faith. The eventual victory of the iconophiles was not only a theological victory, but also a reaffirmation of the importance of Greek heritage in the development of Byzantine culture. Beyond art, another field where this tension between tradition and innovation manifested was in diplomacy. The Byzantine Empire, situated between Europe and Asia, always had to deal with a diversity of neighboring powers, each with its own cultural and political traditions. Instead of attempting to impose its authority militarily, as the Romans did in their heyday, the Byzantines developed a sophisticated and clever diplomacy that often relied on dynasty. I see marriages, bribes, concessions, and strategic alliances. An interesting example of Byzantine diplomacy was how the empire dealt with the Slavic peoples. Although initially seen as a threat, the Slavs eventually became important allies of the empire, especially after their conversion to Orthodox Christianity. The Byzantines not only converted the Slavs to their faith, but also played a crucial role in developing the Slavic script, creating the Cyrillic alphabet, which is still used in many parts of the Slavic world today. This demonstrates the Byzantine Empire's soft power. Instead of conquering militarily, it conquered culturally, expanding its influence without necessarily expanding its territory. This process of cultural expansion was also facilitated by another central characteristic of the empire: its resilience. Although it faced numerous invasions and internal crises over the centuries, the Byzantine Empire showed a remarkable ability to recover and adapt. One reason for this resilience was its ability to assimilate foreign influences without losing its own identity. Its history, the empire was shaped by a variety of cultures, from the Germanic peoples who settled on its borders to the Arabs and Persians who influenced its military and diplomatic practices. At the same time, the empire knew how to reinvent itself when necessary. In times of crisis, such as during barbarian invasions or the Islamic advance, the Byzantines adopted new defense strategies, like creating the famous themes, military administrative divisions that allowed more effective defense of the borders. These innovations ensured that the empire could survive much longer than other contemporary states, remaining a relevant power until its final fall in 1453. Although the end of the Byzantine Empire was tragic, with the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans, its legacy continues to influence the world today. The Orthodox Church, especially in Slavic regions, preserves much of Byzantine culture and traditions. Additionally, the study of Byzantine art, architecture, and diplomacy continues to provide valuable insights into how a civilization can survive so long amid so many internal and external pressures. Therefore, when asking whether the Byzantine Empire was the heir of ancient Greece, the answer is not simple. Certainly, the empire preserved and transmitted many aspects of Greek culture, but it did so in a creative way, transforming that heritage into something new. The Byzantine Empire was in many respects an heir, but it was also a creator, a civilization that managed to balance tradition and innovation, heritage and adaptation, and that left a profound and lasting legacy in world history. Looking at the Byzantine Empire in its entirety, we see a civilization that transcended its Greek roots, shaping its unique identity. It did not just preserve the past, but reshaped it to face the challenges of its time. Ultimately, the Byzantine Empire is a brilliant example of how a civilization can simultaneously honor its traditions and create something entirely new and original.